So we've looked at light in several videos, south-facing slope, north-facing slope. We looked at an edge, right, the forest interior, and power line corridor. This one's looking at changes in light, but over time. Right? So the theme of this video is land use change. So most study areas from the class probably have a pretty strong human imprint. I have an old air photo of the site where I'm standing right now. And what it indicates is that this area had been cleared in the past, and where I'm standing now is relatively new growth. So this photo is from 1939. The Soil Conservation Service started flying a lot of air photos throughout the country starting about that time. So it's a nice resource to be able to go back to. So if we look at this site, lots of young trees, right? They're not the big trees that we see here, so they're obviously younger, have popped up. But take a look at these two larger trees behind you. Here, we call those wolf trees. Kind of a strange term. I think it's referring to being a lone wolf standing out in the pasture. But those trees, notice they have branches low. Right? We're in a forest, it's dark down here. Why would they do that? It's because it used to be an edge, right? So earlier video, we looked at edge environments. The trees were doing just that, right? Sticking their branches into the opening, getting that light. Now the light has been cut off and those branches aren't doing so well. So keep an eye out for things that kind of violate the pattern, right? That don't look the same, and if you can get some land use history of your site, you can start maybe making some sense of it. So continuing with our thought about land use history, I'm in a meadow now that is periodically mowed. So this area would be forest if we let it, right? We talk about that being succession, right? So if you have a disturbance, you remove some of the vegetation, it changes over time, and it would become more like the forest that we just left. It's a high light environment, and so again, it's favoring a different set of species. Unfortunately, a lot of them are non-natives, right? What we might call exotic species, non-native exotics. It means they weren't originally in the location, in this case, Ohio or in the US. So they do really well in these high light environments. We've kind of created an environment that works well for them. And so some of these exotic species can kind of become what we call invasive species. So not only are they non-native or exotic, but they displace native species. Got two here. Autumn olive. You see the little berries on there. It does well here. Its adaptation is that it's able to fix nitrogen. So it's through its roots, it is able to take atmospheric nitrogen and turn it into a form that's usable to plants. And so if it's an old abandoned field, that's a really good adaptation to have. Here's another invasive species, thistle. I don't want to touch it too closely. It has these little barbs, right? And so think about how plants in this environment disperse their seeds. What would be the advantage in an open meadow of having barbs on your seeds? So big lumbering grazing animal comes through and can pick that up and disperse the plant here. Here's another species that's got prickles, but it's more prickles to keep anybody from eating it, right? This is field thistle. It's a native plant. There's some in flower behind me, or in front of me, behind you, that we'll show you in a minute. But it makes little wind-dispersed seeds, like little fairy white things, like milkweed. Maybe you've seen that. So again, in an open environment, wind dispersal can carry it pretty far. So a bit different than in forests, right? Different sets of dispersal strategies. A lot of the wildflowers of the forest use ants as a dispersal mechanism, right? So think about how the plant moves around. Once it's established, it doesn't move much at all. But how does it create or colonize new areas? Speaking of invasive species, I've been focusing mostly on animals. Off to the side there, you can see a lot of dead ash trees, right? So emerald ash borer was an exotic species. It's invasive. It basically has killed off virtually all the ash trees that aren't treated here in Athens. So maybe 5% of the trees were ash trees in this area that I am. They're pretty much all dead. Other parts of the state had much higher ashes. So chances are if you're seeing a lot of dead trees, good chance that they're ash. Another thing that we can see from here is what we call a browse line. So we have a lot of deer here. Say back 100 years or so, there might have been only 1 million, 2 million white-tailed deer in all of North America. And now we have probably close to 750,000 just in Ohio alone, right? So we've removed their predator. Their numbers are really high, and they can really do a lot of damage. They'll eat a lot of the understory in the forest, as you might know if they kind of go into your garden and eat your garden plants. But you can see that browse line, right? So they're just walking along the edge. Deer love that edge environment. They can move into the sunny spot, the shady spot, and they just kind of create a buzz line right along there. So see if you see that in your site.